Hello, GW political junkies. I'm Jessica Nix, and welcome to Capital Crossfire. It is the end of February, and we are 1 month into Joe Biden's presidency. As we approach the 1 year anniversary of lockdown, the country has reached the horrible milestone of 500,000 deaths to COVID-19, the most lives lost to the virus from any nation. President Biden honored the deaths at a candlelit moment of silence, where he asked the nation to remember those lost to the virus. But there is some hope. The nation's average rate of vaccinations is 1.4 million a day, setting up the possibility of completing Biden's promise of 100 million shots in 100 days. Cases are dropping. Since the height of cases in early January at 225,000, the 7 day average has dropped about 75%. However, the fight against COVID is far from over as more variants are emerging. Beyond coronavirus news, let's look at what's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania. A month into President Biden's administration, we are already seeing some interesting policy and political moves. Biden's cabinet is coming together, but there is some pushback from both sides of the aisle on the Office of Management and Budget nominee, Neera Tanden. The COVID relief bill, the American Rescue Plan, is being heavily debated. Biden has also signed over 30 executive orders and actions on a slew of policy positions, from immigration to climate change. Drive down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, and a lot has happened there this past month. Donald Trump was acquitted for the second time in the Senate impeachment trial with a 57-43 vote. The Hill is still dealing with the aftermath of the riot, and Democrats have proposed a structure for a commission to study the January 6th attack. Let's add our panel to the conversation. On the right, MADDIE KATZ, a freshman majoring in political communication from Palm Harbor, Florida. MADDIE is broadcasting from Washington, D.C. She is a member of the College Republicans Communications Committee and an executive board member of GW Young America's Foundation. On the left, PJ Johnson, a junior broadcasting from Shreveport, Louisiana. PJ is majoring in political science with a focus in public policy and is the chief of staff for the GW College Democrats. PJ is also the policy education chair for the GW Roosevelt Policy Institute and a former field campaign intern for Sarah Gideon. Thank you both for joining. Let's start with the impeachment trial. The House impeachment managers took 3 days to present a case against the former president, and the defense team took only 1 day. Democrats presented a clearly laid out argument saying that President Trump used this, quote, big lie about him winning the election to incite the rioters. Using tweets and footage from January 6th, some Republicans were convinced the former president incited insurrection. In the end, 7 Republicans voted to convict. The remaining 43 Republicans who voted to acquit reasoned their vote by saying you cannot impeach a former president. Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, voted to acquit and spoke on the Senate floor, saying Trump was, quote, morally responsible for the insurrection. However, he would not vote to convict because the Senate did not have the jurisdiction to try. As Majority Leader in January, McConnell was the one to move the trial until after Trump was no longer president. So MADDIE, we're going to start with you. After this impeachment trial with 7 Republicans voting to convict, where does the party go from here? Is the Republican Party the party of Trump and ready to back him for a possible 2024 run? Or will the party make a turn to the moderate?
I think we're definitely seeing a split within the party. Not everyone wants to go the same way. Half of the party wants to stick with Trump and his platform, and the other half of the party definitely wants to move to a more moderate platform. I think whoever becomes the 2024 candidate will definitely determine what direction the party goes in. It's definitely possible that Donald Trump could run for president again, but it all depends on where the voters want to see him and whether they want him to run for president or not.
PJ, what does the acquittal say for the future of the GOP? And if Trump runs again, what should the Democratic campaign strategy be, since so much of the country and the Republicans Party still support him?
I think the acquittal demonstrates that many Republicans really have no line. They are willing to put their own lives in danger and that of others in order to have a political benefit. I do agree with MADDIE that there is a split in the party. Now, where that that lands them in 2 years remains to be seen. But two, what the Democrats should do, they should be governing and running like Donald Trump will run again in 2024. I know many people feel that he is maybe a more vulnerable candidate, but he still has a strong base of supporters who will come out for him no matter what. So Democrats really need to deliver on what they have promised the American people, and that will help them win the midterms and keep the Senate and the House in 2022.
Well, before we start speculating a Biden 2024 run, let's talk about the first month of his presidency. We have a lot of policy proposals in these first 100 days, from COVID to climate change to look at. On the coronavirus front, Biden is still hoping to get bipartisan support on the American Rescue Plan. The $1.9 trillion plan is a heavy price point for Republicans who have offered their $600 billion counter proposal. Biden's plan offers $130 billion for K through 12 schools and $35 billion for higher education, directed towards school reopenings and equipping school infrastructure to fit the COVID era. Republicans are offering $20 billion for K through 12 schools. Biden wants to see a $15 minimum wage, and Republicans have countered this past week by proposing an $11 minimum wage. Besides the price differences, Biden wants to see rental assistance, paid leave, and $1,400 direct payments. The American Rescue Plan is meeting support from Americans, with the 68% of Americans supporting the plan, according to a recent Quinnipiac poll. The thin Democratic margin in Congress means if Biden wants the full plan to pass, the plan would have to pass through reconciliation or without the support from a bipartisan Senate. So PJ, do you think this plan is going to pass the House and Senate with or without reconciliation? The plan is expensive. So is $1.9 trillion the sweet spot for the price point, or should Biden start trying to let up on the plan to make room for some of his other lofty policy goals?
I think he should go forth with the plan that he has. Is $1.9 trillion expensive? Yes. But is it nearly enough to aid in the suffering of millions of Americans who've lost their jobs and lost their loved ones? No. Joe Biden is doing what he feels is best with his $1.9 trillion plan. And I do support that. I support the direct checks, helping state and local governments. And he was smart to reject the $600 billion plan from Republicans. There is no need for him to cave on this when the American people are on his side and delivering immediate and strong assistance.
So Maddie, to you, what are the chances that we're going to see some bipartisan support for this plan? And if we're not going to see some support, then what should Biden start compromising on?
I don't think we're going to see bipartisan support with this, especially with that $15 minimum wage in there. I think that's definitely something that is an entirely separate issue and needs to be handled as it is. And I think that if he takes it out, the Republicans will be a lot more willing to push through the bill. But I think that all he's doing by including the $15 minimum wage is just making it more controversial and making it a lot harder for Republicans to be able to work with him on this.
So let's now turn towards immigration, another one of Biden's main policy proposals for this first 100 days. He's already made and he's already seen several of his promises from his campaign, including raising the refugee gap to 125,000, which he has done. He has promised to extend DACA protections, which he's done through an executive order. He's also created a task force to focus on reunifying families separated at the border. However, many of Biden's promises, like creating a path to citizenship for 11 million migrants, needs legislative approval. Last week, Biden's immigration plan was introduced in Congress. The policy is an overhaul of the current immigration system and could be one of the biggest immigration plans passed in decades. Maddie, why is Biden focusing on immigration so early on in his administration? Does it take away from some of his other policy proposals, like the American Rescue Plan we just talked about?
I think that the reason he's focusing on that is just because it's such an important issue to a lot of Democratic voters. I do think it's concerning that he is trying to create a pathway to citizenship for people who've entered the country illegally, just because that's going to be making it harder for people who have tried to enter the country through legal avenues to get in. And it's kind of like a slap in the face to everyone who's been trying to get into this country the legal way. But I think that's a very important issue to Democratic voters, and that's the reason he's focusing so much on it. I think he has been able to focus on some other issues as well, but I think immigration has been one of the bigger things, and it's because of that, of how important it is to Democratic voters.
PJ, same question. Why is Biden focusing on immigration right now and this early on? And where can we see some pushback from the Republicans?
I think he's doing it because he sees that this is his most opportune time right now. He's most likely going to pass the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, and that will give him an insane amount of an insane boost in approval ratings, as well as showing that he can still work with this current Senate caucus. I think that he is looking towards immigration because there was a destructive amount of damage done to the immigration system under Donald Trump, putting kids in cages, family separation, trying to stifle immigration. He's trying to rectify a lot of those problems. And to kind of address something that Maddie said, many of the people who we consider illegal immigrants are people who came here legally. They overstayed their visas. There are not this mass amounts of people who are coming into America. And that is why Joe Biden also wants to address the root of immigration, and that is many people coming to America for economic opportunity. He wants to help bolster that opportunity in their own country so they don't have to immigrate here, thus decreasing illegal immigration.
Another focus of the Biden administration is climate change. Early in the campaign, Biden said he would make this a focal point of his administration. On day one, Biden signed an order to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords, and he has been reversing a lot of Trump-era climate policy. Biden's plan for congressional approval comes with a $2 trillion price tag. The plan's goal is to cut carbon emissions to zero by 2035 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Many of Biden's climate plans could take years without congressional approval, and his reversals of Trump-era policy could be undone in the future if Biden does not have this congressional action. Biden views climate change policy as job creation, but the razor-thin majority in the Senate might prove a difficult hurdle, especially among moderate senators in fossil fuel states like Joe Manchin in West Virginia, who is the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee. PJ, looking internationally, how is Biden's focus on climate change making up for lost time, and will this allow the U.S. to catch up with the international community?
He is trying to make up for lost time. He is trying to put us back into the Paris climate agreements, but we can't really move fast enough. These past 4 years, we've kind of given countries like China a leg up on attempting to invest in green energy while we have not. And to Senator Joe Manchin's point, he has actually been he's more willing, I would say, to invest in, say, solar power and wind power, not necessarily to get rid of many of the fossil fuel-based systems. So I do think that there is room for Joe Biden to work with Joe Manchin. I don't think that fracking will get banned or that we're going to see this mass shutdown of coal plants, but we are, I think, going to see at least a slow integration of more solar panels, more electric stations, and more wind farms, for example.
So Maddie, the price tag on this plan is pretty hefty. Is he going overboard with this climate plan? And same question that I posed to PJ, is this a way for Biden to kind of catch the US up to the international community?
I don't think there really is anywhere that we need to necessarily catch up on. America has been doing way more than most other countries when it comes to the climate. Even under Trump, well, only under Trump, the United States was the #1 oil and natural gas exporter, and all of that was done without the Paris Climate Accords. And I think Joe Biden is making a huge mistake rejoining the Paris Climate Accords, because countries that do way worse for the environment, like China and India, are not being held to the same standard that the United States is. And I think a lot can be done without the Paris Climate Accords, and we really don't need them considering how unfairly America is treated within those accords.
This past week, the country saw a deadly winter storm that left thousands without power for days in Texas. So what happened in Texas? The cold snap paralyzed energy sources like power plants and wind turbines. The power sources were not equipped for cold weather because investments were not made in updating infrastructure. Texas operates on its own power grid, and the state government had no regulations in place to require companies to update the power systems. Market incentives and higher prices were supposed to be enough. Before this week, Texas's grid was regarded as a model, but now there are calls for updating the national grid. Climate scientists believe the uptick in severe weather events will require new infrastructure of the power system. Biden's climate plan has a heavy focus on renewable energy. So how should the policy be altered after the disaster in Texas? Maddie, we'll start with you with that question.
I think the most important thing to do is take away the focus on renewable energy and make it more balanced with non-renewable energy, because we know non-renewable energy is dependable. And of course, it would be good to implement new renewable energy sources, but we need to find some type of balance because we need something that's dependable for the American people. And we can also do that while being environmentally conscious and also bringing in some renewable energy sources.
PJ, I'll let you have the final word. What are your thoughts on Texas and any final climate change wrap-up thoughts?
Well, I think the fact that you saw a huge snowstorm in Texas shows that climate change is real and it's getting very, very aggressive. Like I myself, I live in the South. I'm a neighbor to Texas. We got a huge snowstorm. We lost our power and our water. It's the South. It does not snow here. So therefore, the fact that we're still looking at oil and natural gas as an answer, us using fossil fuels is what caused this. Putting pollutants into the air, all of the oil and natural gas that we burn, this is a sign. We need to go to green energy, and we need the infrastructure that President Biden wants to invest to stop things like this from happening. There shouldn't be a debate anymore about do we move to green energy or not, or how do we do it. It just, when do we do it? What's the most effective way for us to do it?
Well, that is a wrap on our second debate of the semester. PJ Johnson and Maddie KATZ, thank you both for joining me tonight. And thank you to our political junkies for joining us at home. Remember to mask up, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and check us out at gw-tv.com. For all of us at GWTV, I'm Jessica Nix. Thanks for getting caught in the crossfire with us.